I'm Sam Daley-Harris, author of Reclaiming Our Democracy, and you're watching Radical Metal.
Sam, thank you so much for giving us the time. Before we get started, I thought I would read two paragraphs just so those watching kind of know what we're going to get into. And it's in your final word where you write, I reissued Reclaiming Our Democracy because I know that you, the person holding this book, or maybe those listening, care deeply about something important. And I know we have finally come to a point in our history when we can hear this message more clearly and profoundly than ever before. Maybe you want to live in a world where every child is housed and cared for, or every person is safe from gun violence, or a world whose climate can sustain human life, or where democracies can thrive and serve the common good. The challenges are enormous, but I've seen that by working together with the right training and support, we can all move closer to the world we want. Engaging in transformational advocacy is a tall order, but what is at stake is the quality of life on this planet and perhaps life itself. There are two competing visions of who we are as people and our ability to change the world for the better. One sees individuals as timid, inadequate, inconsequential, just not up to the job. The other sees people as inherently strong, committed, brave, visionary, audacious, and heroic, capable of much more than we imagine. And you represent the latter, my friend, and the latter belief in people.
Yep.
I wanted to start with that just to kind of let people know what this conversation is about. You talk about giving your life story.
Mm-hmm.
Here on the channel, we talk about bringing your testimony to the table. So, here that's one of our main tenets with dignity in the discourse. We bring our testimony to the table. And now I'd like to invite you to bring yours and why you started Results and some background about yourself.
Yeah, so I do it the same way every time. And I use the story of self, which was developed by Marshall Gans at Harvard. And it basically asks what happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you to this commitment. And when I'm doing interviews, I really urge people to think about their story of what happened in their life and what decisions did they make that got them to their own commitment. And so here's mine. I have a bachelor's degree. I love this story, actually, because it's so wacky. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music, and I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic Orchestra for 12 years and taught high school music. And then 45 years ago, I founded the anti-poverty lobby Results. And a lot of times, music, poverty lobby, what's the connection? And when I look back in my life, there's certain experiences that start pointing me in a different direction. The death of a friend around high school graduation, I mean like the day before high school graduation in 1964, and the assassination of U.S. Senator Robert Kennedy, again, like a day or two before college graduation in 1968, got me to asking the questions of purpose. Why am I here? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? 9 years later, 1977, I'm invited to a presentation on ending world hunger. And I go to this event thinking, well, hunger's inevitable. What do I know? I'm a musician. I mean, it's inevitable because there must be no solutions. Again, what do I know? Because if there were solutions, somebody would have done something by now. But I go to this event, it's obvious right away. There's no mystery to growing food, clean water, basic health, literacy. I'm not hopeless about the perceived lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature. People will just never get around to doing the things that can be done. But there's one human nature I have some control over, my own, and my questions. Why am I here? What am I here to do? So I get involved in a big way. This is the end of the story. In 1978, 1979, I spoke to 7,000 high school students, classroom by classroom, on ending world hunger. And before I went into the first classroom, I read some statements in Jimmy Carter's Commission on World Hunger calling for the political will to end hunger. So I asked 7,000 high school students, they're all in their 60s now. I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress? I don't want to know if you wrote them. I don't want to know if you, just the name. Out of 7,000 asked, 200, fewer than 3%, could answer correctly. 6,800, over 97%, could not tell me the name of their member of Congress. And results, this anti-poverty lobby grew out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand, and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington on the other. And so, that's like what happened in my life. What decisions did I make? And I really urge people to think about their own life. What happened? What decisions have you made so far that have gotten you to your own commitment? So that story of self, another way of saying it is knowing your why and sharing it.
You know what I think of? I was in the Marine Corps, and when we got trained on the op order, or when you brief your Marines on what the mission is, that stood out to me, and I've always remembered this. The most important part to tell your Marines is why we're doing it. Mm-hmm. Because if the plan goes to the Marines will still understand the intent, and figure out a way around it. Which I just reminded me of that as you reiterate it, but as I read it in your book as well. And it's interesting, after I think I got maybe 20 pages into your book, and I looked up my congressman.
You're not alone.
We have a lot in common. One musician. We're both guitar players, though I know you play other instruments, especially in the orchestra, but we both were substitute teachers too, which I thought was pretty cool. And I was really impressed with your drive and your passion while you were substitute teaching. But it's funny because am I right to say that gave you the flexibility to pursue what you were pursuing?
Yeah. Let me tell you, yes, a couple of quick stories. I remember being in New York City on a visit, and I read a poster about Harry Chapin, the folk singer, doing something on ending world hunger. And this is before my own shift, be glad there were people like him in the world who would do something about a hopeless problem. That was my thought about. And I remember seeing Dick Gregory, the comedian and activist, was running 50 miles a day across the country to bring attention to world hunger. I was moved that there were people like him in the world who would do something about a hopeless problem. So when anyone would say to me, I'm glad there are people in the world like you, well, that's where I started. Glad there were people like that. And so I had decided to move to Los Angeles at one point. I was in the symphony and I was doing some songwriting to get rich as a songwriter so I could focus on this hunger work that I was doing. Yeah. Well, that didn't exactly work out. But early, I was like 6 months in LA, and I was working on an ending hunger event that was being organized. It was a volunteer. And after the end, I met a couple, a singer, songwriter, Stephen Michael Schwartz, and his wife at the time, Wendy Schall. And they said, we were inspired by the event, but frustrated. We don't know what to do. And I said, well, when I lived in Miami, I was in this hunger project group, and we'd meet every week. And once a month, we'd end the meeting early, and we would break out these Bread for the World newsletters, and we would write Congress. And they said, well, let's do that at our house. And Wendy happened to be on a TV show back then called It's a Living, Making a Living. And an old friend from Miami was on the same show and said, I can't be there that night. Let's do it at my house the week after. So all of a sudden, within 2 months, I'm driving to 6 locations, starting or at least leading these letter writing. We won't call them results quite yet, but leading these letter writing sessions. And I'm a substitute teacher. I'm a substitute teacher for 4.5 years. And your question was the flexibility. And I'm going to just end it with this. Back then, and I'm thinking 1983, 84, 85, Eastern Airlines and Delta Airlines offered 21 flights for $649. If you did them in 21 days, it was about $35 a flight. So I would take a 3-week leave from substitute teaching, and I would go on the road 7 days a week for 3 weeks, kind of thing, 21 cities. And I wouldn't go to new ones. I would go to 7 new ones, 7 that I'd went to before, and then 7 much older ones, and ended up starting the first 50 chapters in 27 states, kind of out of these. But the substitute teaching, I would give this assignment, the teacher would give them page 52 and 53 and take roll. And they were just doing their assignment.
Yeah.
And I would pour over Eastern or Delta airline, like, how do I get from LA to wherever? I remember my last thing, my first presentation was in Seattle and I lived in LA, and I was going to do it on Delta. And the only way I could get to Seattle was LA, Atlanta, Seattle for my first of those presentations. But yeah, the substitute teaching, I'd get home by 4. I was in the Pacific time zone. I could hit people after they'd gotten home from work and see if they want to host me, and et cetera. So there was a lot of flexibility by doing that.
Yeah, that's cool, but it also sounds exhausting. Bad travel. You said something in there that caught my attention. Initially, it was to become a successful songwriter, to get rich so that you could influence the world in the way you wanted via money.
Kind of like Harry Chapinish, though, because he would speak about it. He would speak at his concerts. He would, do his activism too.
Tell me a little bit about the journey from maybe that outlook or that approach, versus how you came to politics specifically. Because there's a number, you also talk in the book, hey, there's a number of things we can do. We can write letters, we can sign petitions, we can go to protests. But what led you to the engagement of directly with the political system?
Well, again, initially, and so results is starting in 80.
Yeah.
But it was 78 and 79 where I was asking 7,000 students the name of their member of Congress, because Carter's commission said you needed the political will.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were ill-equipped, based on what these high school kids were saying, to generate political anything, because we didn't even know what the name of our member of Congress was. So it was pretty clear that was kind of a path that was a bit uncharted. There was a quote from Buckminster Fuller, the inventor, futurist. Do you know that name? Let me tell you one story of his, but then I'll tell you the quote. He would say, if you want to turn a huge ocean liner, don't try and push it around from the front. Don't even try and turn the massive rudder. Find the trim tab at the end of the rudder, turn that, and then the rudder, and then the ship will turn. He said, with regard to the ship of state, government, don't try and push it around from the front. Don't even try and turn the rudder. Find the trim tab. And so the question was, okay, what are the trim tabs? Is my member of Congress a trim tab? Is at the time LA Times a trim tab, etc. So the quote that he said that really spoke to me was, the things to do are the things that need doing, that you see need to be done, and that no one else seems to see needs to be done. Well, when I asked 7,000 students the name of their member of Congress and hardly any of them knew, I saw something that probably needed to be done that maybe not too many others saw needed to be done. And so, how'd you get off on the political part of it, or the advocacy, or the lobbying part of it? And it was all in and around that. And the last bit is from LA. How the heck do you make a difference in DC from LA, kind of thing? So it really was it's not like we lived in Northern Virginia and we would just drive in and talk to somebody's member of Congress. Yeah, we were 3,000 miles away, so we had to figure out some other strategies.
Yeah, if you lived where I live now, you could drive right into DC, which is Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
That's funny you say trim tabber. That reminds me, do you ever read Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
Yeah, actually, I haven't read the book, but I know he has another book, The Eighth Habit.
Yeah.
And The Eighth Habit, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he features a guy I've worked with for 40 years, Muhammad Yunus, who founded the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. I think Covey, in The Eighth Habit introduction, actually, that's him over here, talks about Muhammad Yunus, who's founded this bank for the poor, which is another whole other part. But anyway, what was it about the 7 Habits?
Well, he has I don't know if it's a big section. It's been few years since I've read it, but a very impactful book for me. But he talks significantly about that trim tabber metaphor. He talks about the rudder and the smaller rudder. The trim
right. Yeah.
I use it all the time. I just used it with someone I work for, a customer who's making change in their own way. I'm like, you're a trim tabber. That's what you're doing. Yeah. By your example, you are steering a larger ship here just by what you're doing. And so I wanted to encourage him.
Yeah, brilliant. Let me just say this other thing. We don't tend to use it ever, but the acronym RESULTS stands for Responsibility for Ending Starvation Using Legislation, Trim Tabbing, and Support.
Well, if anything, maybe it sparks curiosity. And so people want to look up trim tabbing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great acronym. I mean, results. I mean, and that's the thing at the end of the day. Why I'm so passionate about what you've written is because I think what I'm seeing too is the lack of efficiency of directing our outrage or whatever it is we feel passionately about. I see it's mostly, and I can say this because I have been someone who has done this in the past, where I spent, a couple of years just posting things on Facebook to vent out my outrage, and to no response or probably any impact whatsoever. And I had to kind of learn that lesson, and then I started thinking about, okay, this is not effective. So what is effective? And what do I really feel strongly about? And then it's kind of evolved into this, all right, what I feel strongly about is that there's no more dignified discourse. At least it's not reinforced as much as I'd like to see it, and to maybe be part of that. But why I loved your book, amongst many reasons, is because it gives you this formula of how to prepare volunteers, enable them, empower them to actually engage directly with the political system via their congressmen or their staff, or the tools to not only what to do, how to practice it, how to support each other, then actually how to deliver. And then how to deliver, hey, you might get this guy, you might get this guy, you might get someone who supports you, you might get someone who's outright against this. And here's what you do in every situation. And then also, I mean, I can go on and on, but and how to leverage the media and how that applies pressure. Yeah. But it's all very efficient approaches that in your book has proven results.
Great. Well, so one of the things you said was, I think your phrase was dignified discourse.
Dignity, we want to bring dignity in the discourse.
Yes, dignity. And the thing is, there's a lot of great groups that are out there working on that, but it's discourse with my neighbors, great, with my relatives, great, but it's not with decision makers exactly. And so that's a little bit of the distinction. The other thing is, one of the things that we work with, we call it the champion scale. And so I'll hear someone say to me, well, look, my member of Congress is a hopeless case. There's no reason to meet with him. And someone else will say, well, my member of Congress is so good on this issue, there's really no reason to meet with her. And everyone's busy not meeting with them. And so the champion scale is to move someone who's opposed up to neutral, and someone who's neutral up to supporter. No, you're not done. Move a supporter up to being an advocate or a leader, and someday a champion on your issue. And I'll stop with this one last thing. When I'm coaching a group whose member of Congress opposes their bill or their issue, I have them ask 3 questions. 1, we know you don't support this bill. What would it take to change your mind? And you're listening for assignments. What would it take to change your mind? 2, could you say more about that? 3, why do you think that is? It's basically a deep listening exercise. And I remember a guy, he was working in South Florida. He came from Pennsylvania. He would fly down there. He was working to create a bipartisan climate solutions caucus, and he wanted to get his first Democrat, first Republican to lead the caucus. And he asked the congressman, what would it take to change your mind? And the congressman says, well, if you could get the chambers of commerce on board. And he did. Miami Beach, Coral Gables, North Miami, letters. Comes back with the letters. The congressman said, well, if you could get the mayors on board, like cover my ass. And he did. Miami Beach, Coral Gables, North Miami, the letters from the mayors. And so it took almost 3 years to launch this House Climate Solutions Caucus. And by the end of 2016, when it was launched, it had grown to 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats, because it was Noah's Ark. You couldn't come on with a Democrat or without a Republican. And then President Trump's elected in 2016, and it falls to 6 and 6 because some either retired or lost their race or whatever. By the end of Trump's second year in his first terms, 2018, it had grown to 45 Republicans and 45 Democrats, 2018. Now, to be honest, people were scoffing, like, who gives what can a caucus do? I mean, that's really airy. It's nothing to it kind of thing. That was 2018. Now, March 9th in 2025, there were 21 Republicans who wrote the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, urging him to protect the clean energy tax credits in the Inflation Reduction Act. There is a clear line from this Climate Solutions Caucus that people scoffed at to it would be 3 years. It would be 7 years later. These 21 House Republicans, when Trump's going like this to climate stuff, they're standing up and saying, we want you to protect the clean energy tax credits in a bill that only Democrats voted for back in 2023, I think it was, and Biden signed into law. So, but yeah, what would it take to change your mind?
Yeah.
Say more about that?
My favorite part is, could you say more about that?
Yes.
Because it double taps that I'm here to listen.
Yep.
And then I love it because they have to think through it and really give the details.
Exactly.
Action items.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I love that. I'm glad you mentioned that. You're hitting all the great gems.
We're calling them the greatest hits.
Yeah. I'm sure you've had some time to deliver.
Well, actually, I did a talk today. This is early May 2025. I counted. It was my 100th in-person or Zoom talk, not podcasts, not radio interview, but just a talk.
I think we've probably made a good case, and there's maybe more to be said about it, but how we should engage our political system directly. And you've even given some great tools for that. But now the other side of that coin is the transformational advocacy.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the person who's doing the engaging.
Yes.
Can you speak a little
Yeah.
bit about how that can transform the individual?
Yeah. So let me share the bottom line piece of it. We all know transactional advocacy. Sign the petition, transaction complete. But with transformational advocacy, you're trained, encouraged, and succeed at doing things as an advocate you never thought you could do, like meet with a member of Congress and bring them on board to your issue, or have a letter to the editor published on an issue you care about. And when you do those things you never thought you could do, you see yourself differently. That's the transformation. So I'm going to tell the very shortest version of two people I do in my longer talks, but like Maxine Thomas from Indiana. She told me I had a heart for service, but I was clueless about advocacy, especially political advocacy. The short version, she joins results. She has her first ever meetings with her members of Congress, both senators and all the reps from Indiana, face to face, no aides. The aides were in the room, but it was the elected officials. And she walked out of the last meeting and said, I was euphoric. I was on this high and felt I was part of something revolutionary. From I was clueless to I was euphoric. That is transformational advocacy. And one other quick story, her name is Ellie Sparks. And she said to me, before I joined Citizens Climate Lobby, I was suffering from what she called climate trauma. I would read Bill McKibben's book, Earth, and I would weep at home and I would weep at work. And then she joined CCL and gets trained and has this day where she meets with 20 congressional offices over 4 days. And at the end of those meetings, she calls the experience sacred and profound. That she had to let go of the fear of climate change and the fear that they wouldn't listen to her. She had to center herself in love. She said, releasing fear and centering in love, this is sacred and profound work. Now, who thinks about advocacy as sacred and profound? Well, yeah, it's available if you find the right organization that works to deliver transformation, and you open yourself up to it. So,
yeah, and all of that, I think, maybe goes under the umbrella of a euphoric kind of the feeling of euphoria. And I would argue that the euphoria comes from understanding a better understanding of what you're capable of, right?
and not only just an understanding, all of a sudden an awareness that you're capable of stuff you never thought you could do. And it's kind of, you're kind of shocked and surprised. Let me say this one other thing is, when I'm talking to folks about, well, how do you find an organization that works to deliver? I call on 3 things. 1, recruitment and community building. They bring new people in, not just to build an e-blast list. They bring new people in to form them into local chapters so they're not working alone. And community building, for example, they'll have a monthly whole of organization webinar with guest speakers, Q&A, inspiration. So does the organization bring new people in to form local chapters and do community building, like a monthly webinar that's inspiring? 2, training. How do you get the meeting with the elected? How do you plan for the meeting? What do you ask for in the meeting? How do you write training? 2. 3, breakthroughs. The organization encourages you to move out of your comfort zone and do things you never thought you could do. There's a drawing in Reclaiming Our Democracy, a small circle labeled your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And to the right is a much larger circle labeled where the magic happens.
Yeah.
So is the organization not kicking you out, but encouraging you out of your comfort zone over to where the recruitment and community building, does it offer that or not really? Training, and breakthroughs. Those are the ingredients. And if I could just add, I guess in the program notes, we'll have a link to a sign-up form where if people want to get help in getting connected with these groups, they can let me know by going to that sign-up form, and I can help connect them.
Absolutely. We'll put it in the, in the notes, in the description, and then we'll also probably flash it on the screen too, and add it there. And absolutely. And that's, you're going everywhere I wanted to go with this. Because that's what you are challenging. I don't know if challenging is the right word, but that's what you are. It's at the very least recommending that organizations do with their volunteers. And that's kind of part of the transformation. Don't shy away from asking big things from your volunteers.
Yes, but most organizations, when I say, I'm asked, well, then why isn't there more transformational advocacy offered? I would say it's the fear of organizations to make big asks. Oh, if I ask that, they're not going to say yes. Fear of making big asks, so they make these puny little asks and sign this petition, this email form letter, whatever. And I'm not feeling euphoric this way. And so, it's kind of sad, because I think transformational advocacy is a way to, I love this phrase, to make a difference and heal our democracy in the process. It's not the only solution needed, but it's one critical missing piece: citizens awakening to their power. I don't think we're awake to our power. When President Trump was elected 8 years ago, the first time, 100 million Americans didn't vote. When Biden was elected 4 years later, it was the largest voter turnout in 125 years. 80 million didn't vote. In this last election, I think the number is 90 million. Last November didn't vote. So
I think if folks have awakened their outrage, but they haven't awakened their engagement.
Yeah.
Again,
well, I mean, there are all kinds of engagement. They're outraged and they're either yelling at the TV or they're on the streets. A kind of thing. It's just that it's just not known. Like, it's kind of like, is that old Peggy Lee song, is that all there is? And let me, if I could, just give you these numbers. The independent sector of a big association of nonprofits did this study and found that half the number of NGOs are doing advocacy and lobbying compared to 20 years ago. So fewer, by half, are even doing advocacy. Number two, the Congressional Management Foundation asked grassroots advocacy professionals, what is your primary tactic as an advocacy? These grassroots advocacy staff, 79% said an email form letter. Give me your name and your zip code and we'll send the letter for you kind of thing. 79% said an email form letter was their primary tactic, but only 3% of congressional staff said an email form letter made a big difference.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. So we're being asked to do this thing that doesn't make much of a difference in the eyes of congressional staff.
Because we're too shy to ask maybe more from our volunteers, when we're really maybe depriving them of a transformational experience. Is another way to look at it. Can you go into what have been some of the things that results has improved? Because we've talked about it probably makes sense, but has it done anything? And I know the answer, but
Well, I have this kind of camaraderie of work with your father
Mhm.
with its work at World Vision for many years in this similar field. We started lobbying results in 1984, this is 41 years ago, on what was called child survival back then. Now it might be more referred to as maternal and child health. But when we started lobbying in 1984, UNICEF was reporting that 40,000 children around the world were dying every day, 40,000, from underlying preventable things like measles, coupled with malnutrition. And results volunteers have lobbied every year for 41 years. I mean, we're in the midst of our campaign right now. And global child deaths have fallen by 66% from 40,000 a day in the early 80s to 13,150 a day in 2023. It's still scandalously high, but it's a 66% decline. And so that's one example.
Can you go into some of the details? Because I think that would be also paint the picture with ORT.
Yeah.
And how you educated.
I'm going to give you a quote first that's contextual, and then I'll do the ORT thing. One of the things that we used a lot in the 80s was this quote from Republican Senator Mark Hatfield of Oregon, who said it was an Oregonian op-ed in 1982. He said, "We stand by it as children starve by the millions because we lack the will to eliminate hunger. Yet we have found the will to develop missiles capable of flying over the polar cap and landing within a few hundred feet of their target. This is not innovation. It is a profound distortion of humanity's purpose on Earth." End of quote. Well, that's what a results volunteer's gig is, to remind Congress and remind their community in letters to the editor and remind themselves maybe about humanity's purpose on Earth. So let me give you the example of oral rehydration therapy. It's 1984. That's what we lobbied on the first year. And we're getting reports, frankly, from UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund, and it includes a statement from The Lancet, the British medical journal, The Lancet, that calls oral rehydration therapy potentially the medical advance of the century. Because this simple mixture of sugar, salt, water, baking soda in the right proportion can save millions of lives of kids who die from dehydration. Either they're getting infant formula with dirty water, or whatever's bringing on their diarrhea, then their dehydration. And usually it's an IV solution. Well, there aren't IVs in the village, but the parents can be trained to prepare this solution with water. And we start lobbying on this. In 1984, 5 million kids around the world were dying every year from dehydration brought on by diarrhea. The most recent figure since then is that the 5 million child deaths is 500,000. It's like a 90% reduction in global child deaths from dehydration brought on by diarrhea, the kind of cholera kinds of things. You know, it was such no-brainer. I'm talking to my member of Congress about saving kids' lives for pennies. Back then, a dose of measles vaccine was 6 cents. I mean, it's kind of wacky for me to watch this like measles debate. When when we started lobbying, 3.5 million kids around the world were dying every year. 3.5 million from 6 vaccine preventable diseases. And the 3.5 million has gone down to 750,000, an 80% reduction. Where do you read in the news about a 80% reduction in global child deaths? We just don't read unless we write it in our letter to the editor.
Yeah.
The way the news
Well, it's yeah. I think you kind of alluded to it when you would put together a packet for your maybe not in all
Editorial
cases
writers.
volunteers. Everybody would practice theirs beforehand, practice their section off and bounce it off each other and collaborate to make sure it sounded right and was concise and to the point and educational. But and then like you said, I mean, how you think that's something that might be common knowledge, but congressman that you went to didn't know, because weren't they surprised? It only costs 6 cents. It's only sugar, water, and baking soda and salt.
Yeah. And so in 1986, the volunteers generated 90 editorials, not letters or op-eds. That was where they met with the editorial writer and they wrote an editorial in the Atlanta Journal, the Miami Herald, the LA Times, whatever, New York Times, actually, and so I would send these editorials 4 at a time or 5 at a time to these 100 leaders in Congress, UN agencies, in the executive branch. And the last, I would put a cover letter and 4 editorial, or a cover letter and 5 editorials. The last batch, I get a handwritten note. The cover letter comes back with a handwritten note from the head of UNICEF. This is 1986, who said, "I thank you in my mind at least weekly, if not more often," because he's getting these batches of editorials supporting his child survival fund and campaign. Nobody knows it. "I thank you in my mind at least weekly, if not more often, for what you and your colleagues are accomplishing. And I thought I ought to do it once this year in writing." So it's and the weird part is, I was just writing this in a op-ed yesterday. It's possible that President Trump will be the first president in my lifetime who will preside over the child deaths going down, going back up. It's just, depending on what happens with USAID's funding and with Congress and implementation.
I wanted to ask you how things have changed. It's what I took from the book, which is the most recent edition, right? The first edition was back in mid
1994.
Oh, 94, mid 90s.
31 years ago, yeah.
And we could talk about why you chose to not rewrite it, but reissue and update it. But what I got from the latest version, is that there was still some issues where engagement of the Trump administration hasn't really paid off. But then there's other things, and this, I guess, it relates directly to Doge too. How has that impacted things when Doge comes in with a chainsaw?
Yeah.
And literally takes down USAID, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
What's the change? How do you change your approach, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This has been my work as a volunteer and then as a staffer for 48 years. And there's been some grief about how this has been approached. I don't know if you're in some ways a management consultant or a different, if you want to find some waste, fraud, and abuse, there's ways to find that rather than, whack here and whack there kind of thing. And it's very strange, because as we sit here right now in 2025, there's still 1.65 billion appropriated this year for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. There's still, and the Global Fund. I'm gonna backtrack and talk about Trump 1 in 2017. It actually was in 2019. President Trump called for a 29% cut to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, after it and its partners had saved 38 million lives back then. And most people didn't know that the president called for a 29% cut. And if they did, they'd probably throw up their hands. What can you do? You can't fight City Hall. The folks I know roll up their sleeves and got to work. And they got hundreds of members of Congress, Democrats, Republicans, to co-sponsor resolutions in the House and Senate supporting the Global Fund, and to sign letters to Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, and to the top appropriators, all in support of the Global Fund. And in my regular talks, I may send you the photo if you include it. I have this photo of Margaret Smith of Dallas, Texas, holding Senator Ted Cruz's hand with two hands. And she said, I learned in results I hold Senator Cruz's hands with two hands, and I don't let go until I finish my laser talk on the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. Well, that was the year that Senator Cruz said yes, first time, to one of Results' requests. He co-sponsored the Senate resolution. Well, in the end, the Congress appropriated a 16% increase, and President Trump signed it into law, to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. Well, in 2025, the new number is, since 2022, so these numbers actually go from 2022 to 2023, sorry, 2002, 2023, 21-year period. The Global Fund and its partners, including PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS, have saved 65 million lives over that 21-year period. Again, what paper do you read the 65 million lives saved? And so that was Trump 1, where it was a little more regular order. Now it's like, Elon Musk goes into the agency and shuts down the computers, or at least turns yours off and gives you till 2 o'clock to get out of the building and whatever. And a profound distortion of humanity's purpose on Earth.
How do you navigate that? Because it's not only that, but you just don't know what's going to happen day to day. There's no
big time.
predictability.
Well, here's what's happening in May of 2025. There are letters circulated in the House at the moment, 2 House Republicans and 3 House Democrats, on funding for maternal and child health and the Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, and nutrition. There are letters circulating in the House, 2 House Republicans and 2 House Democrats, on the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, and PEPFAR, the Emergency Fund for Africa. We're about to see what happens, because there's the court ruling, and does the administration balk, and there's a constitutional crisis, and then there's the Congress rejecting the cuts, which is another constitutional crisis. So the weird part is, even though it might have been like these grants have been cut off, kind of thing, the money is still there, and the Congress hasn't approved. It's called a rescission. The Congress has not approved yet that $2 billion cut or that $4 billion cut. So we don't know, actually. And not all, but the main thing Results is doing at the moment is continuing to get Republicans and Democrats to stand up and say, we need to fund the Global Fund or maternal and child health or whatever it is. And we shall see.
Well, that's the great thing about Results too, is the tenacity. You don't rest on your laurels, even if you have your congressman in the bag, which may be a terrible way to say it, but you don't rest then, and you don't rest when they oppose what it is you're trying to do.
And the current head of Results on this webinar I was on today, she said, a lot of groups are saying, shouldn't we ask for less? If we're going to have this sign-on letter or whatever. And she said, one of the things I've learned in Results is you don't negotiate with yourself. Don't negotiate down with yourself. What's the vision? Put it out there. You may get it. You may not. And the other thing is, we're in a global fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria 3-year replenishment in this year, 2025. Again, is the U.S. about to appropriate zero, or some significant number? Will the 65 million lives saved go up, let's say, the next year, or will it go down because people aren't getting their antiretroviral drugs, or the tuberculosis is becoming a more virulent form of tuberculosis because it's not being treated?
Well, Results has been very successful in their use of the media. I would say not only to maybe apply pressure, where, say, for an example, a congressman reading the op-eds of their local paper to understand what his or her constituents are feeling and thinking, and that may apply or have some impact, let's say. But not only that to nudge their leaders, but also to share their gratitude sometimes, which also to reinforce that relationship, and also could lead to action by those political leaders. But how does that change? Well, one, are op-eds still effective today? But two, how do you apply media pressure in today's day and age with the nature of media these days, and then also with the nature of the political climate these days, because they may feel pressure in different ways.
Oh, big time.
Some of them would even feel media pressure.
Yeah, well, let me go a couple of things. Let's say you're a member of Congress from Oklahoma, or you're a member of Congress from Idaho. So you're in Washington. Where do you look to find the pulse of your community? Well, you might read some of the letters that you're sent and the meetings you have, but what else? Do you read a blog of a major blogger in your state or your congress? Sure, you might. Do you look at the local newspaper still? Yeah, probably. And at this point, maybe in 10 years you don't. But again, if I'm from Oregon in Washington, D.C. in Congress, yeah, I'll look to the paper back home in my congressional district to see what the pulse is. So that's one thing. The second thing is, we train people, when you have your letter to the editor published, don't just like do a dance and take a nap. No, post it on social media, send it to your friends. Of course, let the organization know, send it to your elected officials, call the aide to make sure they saw it, because you've built a relationship with these aides over the years. So don't just like collapse, but get it out there further. The last thing that I want to say is, one of the things I recommend, if you're meeting with a member of Congress who opposes your work, I tell people to go to their website and look at their news releases about things they did that they're proud of. Mm-hmm. And find one thing that you actually like, that they're proud of, and write letters to the editor thanking them for their leadership on that, and hoping they can bring that same leadership to your issue.
Yeah.
So, it's a pat on the back and a little nudge to think about you. And all of a sudden, it's not just the 6 of them in the chapter. They're talking to the community and letters to the editor. And all of a sudden, you're bigger than this one person or these 6 people in the chapter.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's sort of the old saying, get more with honey than with vinegar. Compare that to at least start a conversation with, hey, I really appreciate what you did with A, B, and C, as opposed to, yelling at them in a restaurant for something they didn't do. Does Results still, and people may not know this, it's an actual lobbying organization. It's a 501c4. Did I get that right?
Results is a C4. That means if you give money, it's not tax deductible, because they lobby Congress. C4s are semi in the news these days. It was a C4 in 1981 kind of thing. But and Results Ed Fund is a C3, which if you contribute to that, it is tax deductible. But
Gotcha.
President Trump is wielding, I'm going to make Harvard lose its tax deductible status or whatever. It's a different world.
Results has really made a presence on the Hill.
Yep.
Where I think I would argue, or at least I don't know this for sure, but some may fear them because they know what they're capable of. So they don't want to ignore Results.
Yeah.
But is it harder to get in the door, even if you're a constituent, if they know, hey, oh, this guy's from Results?
Well, I mean, it could be harder because I want to hate foreign assistance. I want to ignore domestic poverty. Well, okay, you could want to not confront that conversation, but it's not like because they're going to come in and beat you over the head. The goal and results, if you're my member of Congress and this is our first meeting, yeah, sure, I might want you to co-sponsor this bill or whatever, but my real goal is to start a relationship. I want to come back. And so, it's not like, what? You're not going to co-sponsor? I'm out of here.
Yeah.
No, they're all out just to build a long-term relationship. And
I also, another thing I wanted to highlight that I love about it is that, I am in government consulting, by the way, and we can talk about that if you want, but in general, I always feel like for me to succeed at my job is to make my boss's job easier, not harder. And what I love about Results is they're making their congressman's or their senator's job easier when they co-sponsor a bill or whatnot. They do the legwork that they may not have time to do.
Yeah.
They do the legwork for them and give them all the tools. It's like you reaching out to me and providing me with some questions.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to make it easy on you, Jesse, to interview me.
Yeah. And part of making it easier on your member of Congress is A, to bring other members of Congress on board to this issue so you're not standing out alone. B, to get some positive media coverage and educate some key players in the community on this issue is all part of making it easier.
I've got some lightweight softball questions.
Okay.
Not that those were hardball questions.
Right.
I wanted to ask, you worked with some celebrities back in the day. Are celebrities still a part of the organization? And cool names to drop?
They're not actually. I mean, I don't think so. I wish it were more so. But yeah, when we worked back in, I'm thinking, for example, 1990, we did a World Summit for Children candlelight vigils the week before. In that case, it was 71 heads of state and government gathering in New York for this World Summit for Children. And we did a candlelight vigils, and we did a segment on the Oprah Winfrey Show in 1990, and actress Valerie Harper, they're all deceased now, actually. Actor Raul Julia and Louis Gossett Jr. were among the guests on that show.
I was just curious. Celebrities are always fun to talk about.
Yeah. I would like to share one story around the cynicism. And I was interviewed in early 2024, 11 months before the election, on a national public radio program. It goes to hundreds of stations. So got to be tens of thousands of listeners. So I was really moved by how vulnerable this particular host was. And this was question number 2. He said, the passive nature to our politics now, you can feel beat down by it. I mean, this is my career and I feel beat down by it. I don't operate the same way others do because I'm a political journalist, but I do have to pay attention. It's a grind. It's a grind, Sam. I mean, I know you know that. What am I feeling? What is the way out of that? That was question number 2. I was kind of moved that he said, I feel beat down by it. This is my career. It's a grind. First thing I said was, Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweikert said, "We aren't passengers on spaceship Earth. We're the crew." Well, are we? And if we're crew, how does crew operate? And the second thing I said was, futurist and climate activist Alex Steffen said, in fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. Well, yeah, if I'm cynical, I'm obedient to the way things are. I'm not going to do anything about it. Why would I if nothing I do makes a difference? The third thing, I didn't say this because I'd never met the guy yet, but there's a Stanford professor who I met later, Jamil Zaki, and he had the book out. I love the title. It's called Hope for Cynics, The Surprising Science of Human Goodness. And in this book, he talks about, if I'm cynical, it's like I'm playing poker and I fold my hand before the game even starts. And if I'm a civic cynic, it's like I fold my hand before the Congress is even sworn in, before the first bill is even introduced. I'm out, kind of thing. And so, it's really something that we need to address, that cynicism that keeps us so much on the sidelines.
Oh man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Both quotes were very powerful. And I hadn't heard that last one. The other two, the other ones are in the book. Well, before I ask a couple more fun questions, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask?
No, I think we're good.
Did we nail it? I thought that was pretty good. It definitely hit the parts that I've been very excited about and inspired by. I mentioned I sent this book to my sister, and it will be obvious because we'll be on the channel, but definitely will be sharing the news and my thoughts from the book. So here go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to say, there are other groups that I've coached.
Yeah.
In the same methodology, transformational advocacy, and I want to name a couple of them. One is Results, of course. Another is Citizens Climate Lobby. And if folks go to reclaimingourdemocracy.com, there's a learn more thing on the homepage. That's where you can let me know that you'd like to help getting connected to one of these groups. Citizens Climate Lobby. Then there's the Quaker Lobby, Friends Committee on National Legislation. Their focus is a bit more on peace issues. I've coached groups like Catholic Relief Services for 2 years on this same kind of thing. And at the moment, I'm coaching new group that I'm working with, the United Church of Christ, their Climate Hope affiliates. And as we're speaking, they're about to start the third or fourth because it's in California. And he's live in one room, but there's another group in a nearby town on Zoom with them, kind of thing. And so there are a few more groups out there that are doing this kind of work.
You mentioned Catholic Relief Services. I used to travel with my dad a lot when he was at World Vision. My older brother and sister were in college, so they could never go. So I always went. And I remember I had a very positive experience. I think it was an orphanage in maybe Vietnam or something. I can't remember the country at the moment. We went to a lot of places. But I just remember feeling, wow, these guys are awesome. And following them a bit since then. I was like 15 or something.
Yeah.
But
were you living in Federal Way or near Monrovia at that time?
During that time, it would have probably been Monrovia.
Okay,
My dad started, I think, in '87, and then moved World Vision. You're right, to Federal Way. At some point in there, he was there 11 years. It's still in Federal Way.
Yeah.
Right? And I traveled mostly in '87 because I was younger. And by the time it's funny because I went to school, I was trying to, do my thing and go away from home properly as some people going into college may want to do. And I ended up going to school in Bellingham, Washington. So that was 94.
Yeah.
And then they followed me, unbeknownst to the future. They ended up following me there to Federal Way because they moved World Vision up there. I was like, can I get away?
Can't stay away from you.
But it was great because it was really fun. I could come home on the weekends and things like that. It ended up being great.
Cool.
So what are you off to now?
Well, I'm going to take a walk with my wife,
Nice.
and
I'm so inspired by you. I'm so inspired by your book that it's lived on till today, and I'm sure will live on. Talk about a living word for transformational advocacy. And I feel so grateful and blessed that you reached out and that we could have this conversation.
Yeah, it's been a thrill to talk with you. Thanks so much.
Hey, don't be a stranger. Stay in touch, okay?
Will do.
I will with you as well, if you don't mind.
I love it.
All right, sir.
Okay, thanks. I think I'm going to send you 3 photos and say, this is what I was saying. You don't have to add them in, but if you want to, you'll have them, kind of thing. You're like the woman holding Ted Cruz's hand or whatever. I'll let you know what it was I was saying at that moment, and you can include it or not.
I think we will. We only went a little over an hour, so I think we'll just do it the traditional way, and I'll probably add some stuff too, depending on what we're talking about.
Great. Yeah.
And do you want? I also offer this, or if you want me to, I can send it to you before we release it to get your final thumbs up. Some people want that, other people don't. Okay. Yeah. That's what we prefer, so we don't have to wait on you.
Good. No. Good. Okay.
All right, but I'll send you the link as soon as it's done, my friend.
Okay.
All right, see you soon.
Take care.
Yeah, take care.